All right, welcome to the part one deep dive. So we've just created a Angular Ionic application, and the command line did most of the work for us in terms of creating a project, building out a bunch of framework source code for us, and then we went in and altered a few lines of code to get our application. But we probably have no clue how this thing is actually put together. Those of you who are familiar with basic HTML websites, you generally know that there's like a www directory and that there's an entry point into the application, and it's usually index.html. So it would be right to assume that we could come into the application and take a look at index.html and get a sense of what's going on. And for the most part, that's true. So I've opened up index.html here, and we see, okay, there's a basic kind of metadata before in the head, and then we have a body, and then we have this app root. And if I'm thinking that this is the page that's getting served out to me, that it's basically going to have nothing in it. You know, there's no content in here. So obviously, app root has to be getting replaced with something else. I'm going to switch over to the browser real quick, and let's take a look at, let's go up to turn on our developer tools. And we can see that the elements that list what the content is for this page, it looks somewhat familiar to what we saw in that index.html, in that here's a body, and then here's an app root. And we saw that app root. And here is a bunch of content inside of app root. We see Ion app, we see Ion router outlet, and if we drill down a little further, we see app tabs, Ion tabs, and then further down, tab 1. And we see that tab 1 is the currently highlighted one, and it lights up on the screen when we mouse over it. Tab 2 and tab 3, which don't light up because they're not currently visible on the screen. Okay, so we know that somehow this content's getting filled in. Okay, so let's switch back over to VS Code. So one of the things that happens when Angular and Ionic run, and this is true of other frameworks like React, is that this index.html is going to be manipulated before it gets sent to the browser. So at some point when you do Ionic serve or you do a build, it's going to create an output file that transforms this HTML file and includes a bunch of other JavaScript files and replaces this app root with the inherent application underneath it. So where does it get this from, this app root? So the main.ts file is our entry point, and TS, by the way, stands for TypeScript. So it's a TypeScript file. A Node server can serve up TypeScript files and JavaScript files. And what happens at build time is it essentially converts the TS files, TypeScript files, into JavaScript files. And TypeScript and JavaScript are essentially the same, with the main exception being is that for a TypeScript file, every variable has to have its type declared, whereas in JavaScript, that's normally not true. So looking at this main.ts file, we have some imports, and we'll look at those in a minute. But down here, we see that it is going to bootstrap the system, and it's going to bootstrap it with app module. Okay, so, and we saw this because we came in and modified this file when we added this additional element down here, to give it the PWA elements. Okay, so what is app module? Well, we see app module was declared up here as part of an import, and we can see where it came from. It came from the app directory, app.module. So if we open the app directory and we go to app.module.ts, now we're looking at an Angular file. And in Angular, everything is made up of modules. Modules contain components, and components are the things that we see on the screen. Component consists of essentially a controller, if you will, which would be a TypeScript file, and a view, which would be an HTML file. So if we're looking at this app module TS, we see that when it's declared, it declares a component here, app component. And that app component, we can see, is in the app.component file. So there it is. And if we looked at the app component file, we'll see that it has a selector, or sorry, a template that is app component HTML. And here's app component HTML. And aha, what we were seeing in the browser earlier underneath the app root was an Ion app and an Ion router outlet. So we can see how pieces of the puzzle are starting to be filled in. In this app component TS, this is essentially getting the app ready. It declares some other things like splash screens and status bars, a style sheet, for the HTML file, and what is this base selector where it's going to put this? It's going to put it in app root. Okay, so we're starting to see how this is coming together. And if we go to that app root, the question starts to be, how is Ion Router Outlet putting in all of those tabs? So if we go back to the app.module.ts, we see that one of the things that was being imported was this app routing module, which is found at app.routing.module. And if we take a look here, we'll see that it is loading. This is a route manager, if you will. How do I get from page to page to page? It's going to import from tabs.module. So let's take a look at that. Tabs module. And again, this is another Angular module. And it's importing the tabs page routing module, which we see here. And in here we can see that it's defining the various children components that it's going to put on the tabs page or make available from the tabs page with the children, so tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, the default path, which would be to tab 1. And so if we went and looked at those, tab 1, we'll see a tab1.module. Again, another Angular module. It's declaring it as tab 1 page. And we can see that it gets its content from tab 1 page. So this whole chain of our children, set of children that make up this tree are all these views and components that are going to get shown on our application. So hope this deep dive has helped give you a basic understanding of how the Angular tree structure works and the path of the architecture for how it loads up everything.